You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. Today, we have episode 94, and this will be about my upcoming webinar, 4 Actions to Jumpstart Your Encore Career. My goal is always to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organizations. And I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode and use that as a tool to capture notes as you explore the concepts in this episode. Or to help you get started on your journey and to stay up to date on new episodes, please download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. Now, today's episode is about the upcoming webinar that we're going to have on how to jumpstart your Encore career. So why am I doing this webinar? Well, some of it you'll hear about in the webinar, but to give you a bit of a preview of it, there's a demographic issue in the U.S. Over 28 million boomers are retired, and we're adding about 2 million a year. That's a tremendous amount of possible people working that are now, in a sense, on the sidelines. We also have a longevity issue. It used to be that if people retired or left the workforce in their 60s, they really only had a few years in front of them. But now it could be easily 30 years in front of them. So how are people financing that longer period of time? What are they going to do during that period of time? So again, that's just an issue that's with us right now. And then finally, there's the issue around technology. And technology is kind of a two-edged sword. One, we have issues around, artificial intelligence, all kinds of new manufacturing technologies, all kinds of just new technology in general. And of course, the boomer generation didn't grow up in these technologies, so they really have to learn them. And so that's one thing that might hold people back from participating in the new economy because they don't know that technology. Again, it's certainly possible to learn, and people of all ages can learn these technologies. On the other hand, the fact of these new technologies means it's easier than ever to start a business. You can truly create your own company of one. And so it's not impossible for an individual to have a very successful encore career given all the technologies that are available as long as you choose to use them. Now, just in general, the pandemic whipsawed us all. All of a sudden, we all had to learn to be resilient and innovative, no matter what we were doing. If we were working, we were forced to try out new ways to create things in our workplace and reinvent our workplace, literally. We also had to learn how to develop ourselves and our skills faster than ever, and often we had to do this at least somewhat independently. So again, people who are contemplating, maybe leaving the workforce or retiring or moving to the next thing, their encore career, all of these things you've just gone through in the last year are kind of preparing you for that. We also saw an interesting divide between what we always in the past strove for, which was efficiency, and now all of a sudden we needed innovation. Operations that had some slack were able to had a mindset to develop themselves. They handled this much better than those that were solely focused on efficiency. In some sense, a sole focus on efficiency made some organizations more fragile, quite frankly. I had a good friend and colleague that once said, there is a fine line between an operations that's lean and mean versus one that's anorexic and angry. And again, that can happen. A sole focus on efficiency can leave you with a fragile operation. So as business owners, as you think about, hey, there may be people out there that I could call in on a temporary basis, on a short-term basis. I could use some resources from outside my organization, and they are out there. Another thing that happened during the pandemic is a lot of perspectives and processes and rules were unfrozen. All of a sudden, we had to do stuff differently. So what we thought was the only way to do things, all of a sudden, there were now several different ways to do things. And we probably won't snap back to the old processes. We are social animals, so we will go back to the workplace. We will, get together again. But we may move to new balance with respect to work, both in place and remotely. So we'll just have to see how that works out. Now, in terms of workforce in general, I've done some work locally on that. Everybody needs people, whether it be entry-level people, whether it be highly skilled talent. It's just interesting that everybody needs people. And recently, I heard of a report in one state that said in that state, there were 60,000 people looking for work, and there were 66,000 jobs available. So that means in some cases, our gap with respect to the people we need versus the people available is actually somewhat relatively small. Again, just as an example, some local programs are helping high school students learn to become welders or machine tool operators or a variety of different skills, healthcare workers. And what they found is the companies are actually involved in helping these people through apprenticeship programs. The new talent, the students, they are eager to get in. They love to learn. They love to participate. And on the flip side, the companies that are actually bringing those people in as apprentices, the existing workforce loves to teach them. They love to work with them, and they really love sharing their skills and knowledge. So it's one of those things where we thought there'd be a lot of resistance one way or the other. That doesn't always prove out. So this was one area, one kind of skill sets, but I'm guessing it would hold true in others. The other thing is we think about small and medium companies. They have limited time and attention. And it's hard to bring on new talent. They do have to do it. They have to do it all the time, but it is a challenge. So to the extent that they might step out and look at some of these senior resources out there to help them bring on new talent, that might be an opportunity for both the business owner and the senior talent. And then what if experienced talent could fill a gap in your needs and serve in addition as serving as coaches and mentors to new talent? There's probably some really experienced talent that may not want to fully retire, but on the other hand, they really don't want to just jump right back into a 50-plus hour a week job. So how can we strike that balance between what is some of the senior talent out there wanting to do and what are some of the company's skills that they need? So sort of a quick review on the webinar. I'm going to be sharing some of these same facts with you, but I'll also be sharing my journey and also how my journey could map onto some of your possibilities. I'm going to be talking with you about these 4 steps I mentioned in the title of the episode. They're important. Probably the most important one is the first one, which revolves around mindset. But the second one is also important for the silver entrepreneur or the encore career. You have to look at what your value proposition is. This isn't a simple recitation of my previous job experiences. You may have to fine-tune that so that you and a potential employer can really fine-tune what's the piece of work you can do for them. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there's skill sets you have to adopt. Now, some of them are just skill sets you need because you're leaving maybe a corporate world and now you're forming your own company of one. Some of them are going to be technical skills, because those are the things, again, I and others like me are digital immigrants. So there's new skills we have to learn, and we really have to keep focused on building those skills. And the final step that I'll ask you to take is, how are you going to practice this? It's one thing to have knowledge of these things. We can all read books, watch videos, go to conferences, but how do we actually put this stuff into practice? Again, if you're going to create your own company of one, you're going to have to practice doing it. Then in the webinar, I'll talk a little about what your journey will be like as you go through this process, some do's and don'ts that I've learned in the 4 or 5 years that I've been building myself up as a company of one. And then finally, I'm going to actually give you an opportunity to show how I will help you create your company of one. So that's basically how the webinar is going to go. Again, it's going to be on Wednesday, June 9th at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. And there will be a link to this in the show notes. But as a recap, so what did we talk about on today's episode? Again, what's going to be covered in the webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about demographics. The 28 million boomers are retired, and they create a significant amount of talent out there. Longevity. People are living longer now and can contribute in society probably for longer than they had in the past. And then finally, the technology. I've mentioned that several times. It's a two-edged sword. We have to learn new technology, but it allows a lot of things to happen as far as creating a company of one. I talked about how the pandemic had whipsawed us all, and the fact that a lot of perspectives and processes and rules run frozen. So all of a sudden, how we do work, when we do work, where we do work, a lot of that we've seen a lot of possibilities. Some of them have worked, some of them not so much, but we'll have those available now moving forward. And I talked a little bit about workforce and how even today, everybody needs workforce. It's one of those things where the U.S. in general, we were going to have workforce issues even before the pandemic, but now it just kind of come back and really impacted us a lot more. And then finally, I shared a little bit about the webinar and how I'm going to help you create your company of one. So what's up next? Again, as far as the Leading the Factory Forward podcast, we're going to continue a mix of solo episodes. I'm going to start another series of interviews with experts. Some of these will be in manufacturing, but also in some other leadership areas that can help you build your business or your organization. And then again, as in today, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and ideas on becoming a silver entrepreneur or starting an encore career and how silver talent might help you in your business. And as always, I encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode as you start your exploration of this episode. So once again, on June 9th at 12:30 p.m. Central Time, I'll be offering a free webinar on 4 actions that will jumpstart your encore career. A link for the registration will be included in the show notes. And if you have any questions, my email address is also included in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.